to a certain stimulus where you would apply your knowledge of martial arts.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Okay.
But this must be done on a conscious level. If I don't want to be controlled by that big giant space goat.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. In all of the runs that have been happening, and let's say in the past year or so, Cliff, where do you see, because we got off on a fantastic roll last time, where do you see your knowledge and expertise in spiritual matters coming into all of the information that the runs are coming up with now?
Well, that goes to a difficult area. I'm somewhat schooled, or educated. I shouldn't use the word schooling. I'm self-educated in some areas of what would have to go towards metaphysics, whether it's religious, spiritual, or however you want to frame it. But coming from a scientific background, there's no reason that the two need be separate. And then you discover from a linguistic background that basically that there's all kinds of strange little links out there that are extremely curious. So, for instance, why should the Basque language have an exact sentence phonetically that means exactly the same thing and has exactly the same emotional tone as the same four-word sentence in Japanese? You know, it's like, that's rather odd. Should not occur statistically.
Exactly
the
the same.
And so on.
Exactly
we find
the same
all these
sounds?
strange little links, and then you start digging around and like, oh, geez, somebody out there is hiding vast quantities of knowledge from the ordinary person unless they go and root it around. Mm-hmm. And then somebody is not only hiding that knowledge, they are actively coding that knowledge with an emotional flavor or tone to discourage people from rooting around in it.
That's pretty far out.
It is, but you talk to anybody that's into the forbidden archaeology field.
Right.
They're feeling that. They're living that. Every time they poke their nose into something like, giant pyramidical structures off the coast of Japan indicating a highly advanced civilization, or huge megaliths in Turkey in rock sizes that are obviously moved and placed certain ways, that we could not build cranes large enough to lift them today if we put the combined resources of the world to work.
Right, yeah.
And this exists, and yet sure don't see it in your education system.
That is for darn sure.
And you sure don't see the discussions of the other intelligent quasi-hominid species that cohabited the planet with man. The 20,000 elongated skulls that are not the work of elongating skulls via taping the kids to boards, as they would have you believe.
Where did they find those? Was that India?
Oh, it's all over the planet. There were a bunch that were recently discovered down in your neck of the woods.
Oh, I thought they were just people that came across the border.
No, what we were looking at,
that's a joke, Clip.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
But the subject for your area was actually the reports from that New Zealand team that got all caught up in the Americans, basically putting the kibosh on them saying anything about it.
Wow.
And then, you start seeing the same kind of things where we have particular kinds of head shapes shown in hieroglyphs, and attributing certain powers to certain head shapes, having helmets that could supposedly impart knowledge without having to think about it.
Right. Which is where our concept of the dunce cap came from.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so you start seeing all these little different threads, and you think, okay, well, things are not as we've been told. Now it's time to get serious about it. And if you really, really got serious about it from a linguistic point of view, which is where I was at the time, then ultimately you may find yourself reading some stuff in Sanskrit and being directed towards, or Chinese, and being directed towards one of two particular kinds of books, which predate the subsequent civilization from the last flood episode.
Okay. Tell me more.
Well, one of the books is The Science of Yoga.
Yep.
It's got a number of modern authors. It doesn't matter who wrote it. All they're doing is taking the same sutras and the same Patanjali stuff and redoing it. And the other is the Chinese Book of Life. And they're both sometimes called The Secret of the Golden Flower. A really good translation is Richard Wilhelm. That one shouldn't be messed with unless you've done some serious meditation, because you can cause yourself some harm, although they do have a section in there saying if any of this stuff happens to you, don't do it anymore.
Are they getting into Kundalini?
No, it's not that at all. The Chinese have a different system where there's 7 chakras or wheels of consciousness within the human body according to the let's just call it the Hindu system, although I don't want to particularly apply the Hindustani religion over it, the yogic system. The Chinese believe there's 3 energy areas. That those 3 areas are subdivided into 7 is neither here nor there.
Okay.
But their approach in the Chinese side of things was initially triggered by the desire for eternal life. And they found certain techniques, if you will, for mind control that are not ordinarily practiced, and when they are practiced can yield some rather startling results with abilities within the phenomenal world. Theoretically, I see no reason why one could not live indefinitely if that was the desire. But of course, one of the things that you've got to do as you go through this whole process is shed such foolish desires.
Oh, okay, so you're saying is, yes, it works, but you don't want it to work. That is
the goal is changed by the process.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay.
And kind of like where we found ourselves, because our work was initially done in the mid-'90s to kind of catch another wave we saw going, which was the technology stock wave.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so it was because I decided at one point, well, geez, it makes, after reading newspaper articles and investigating stock market and money and so forth, I discovered it made absolutely no sense. The rationale that these things were good buys and they had this value and so on was never followed by anybody. Everybody always traded on emotion. And since that was the case, I thought, well, geez, if one could figure out what words were being used in relation to a particular stock, one could track that over time. You would know whether a whole lot of people were like going to dump the stock soon or something along those lines.
Are you talking, Cliff, the ability of picking a one specific stock or a general category of stocks?
No, an individual stock. I hadn't thought of even going to categories or indexes. I was after individual companies, because bear in mind I was a programmer. I was doing okay in the 90s boom, but I wasn't particularly rich because I never really towed the company line, was always off doing something else, didn't work that hard, except for when I had a project I'd work my butt off, but then I may kick back for 6 months and read something interesting, right? And so I was after an individual stock with the idea that, oh, geez, I can solve my problems, provide money, and continue my ongoing fascination with language and education and so on, if only I could figure out when everybody was going to sell Microsoft and sell them week ahead of time.
Or sell short or something like that.
Well, that I didn't even understand at the time. And now that I do understand it, I wouldn't do it because of its moral implications. But the fact of the matter is, I was early. We sold 2 weeks early.
Mm-hmm. Did you make any money?
Sure.
Okay, good. That's still in this day and age, Cliff. It's still the bottom line.
Yeah, it's all gone now, so that's neither here nor there. I mean, money has a tendency to go through my hands like water. I get used to long dry spells, but when it's wet, it's wet.
Wow. Now, just out of curiosity, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but do you use the techniques for your own and your family's benefit?
No.
I didn't think so.
No. I don't mess with paper or any of that.
Yeah.
I will tell you that if I had money, I would certainly follow its advice and purchase gold or silver if I could, and I have in the past done so, having had to convert most of it away, but that's, again, neither here nor there. If I had dollars, one of the things that for the past 5 or 6 months, the indications have been that we're going to get into one of those periods like the early 1980s, and gold is going to go whoosh, and it's going to be soon surpassed by silver. And we may reach parity or greater.
Wait a minute. Silver is going to go past gold in price and value?
In emotional weight, it sure is shaping up that way now.
Wow.
And there's all kinds of reasons to believe that should be the case on a practical level because of historical ratios of 12 and 16 ounces of silver to gold being distorted by the current level of gold and silver manipulation that's been going on for a number of years. During the same period of time when vast quantities of new ways of using silver were discovered and are still being discovered, and we're consuming it. Whereas we don't consume gold, so the gold base is relatively stable. What had been at one point a very large silver base of above-ground metals has now been basically eaten up by industrial processes in ways that may be, for the large part, unrecoverable.
Wow.
And so there are factual reasons to believe that some of our emotional pre-indicators are certainly following along.
Yeah.
And I don't think you'll find a lot of people that are, for instance, readers of Urban Survival that are going to disagree, because they've been buying gold and silver and have done fairly well.
Oh, yeah. And you and I have some mutual friends who have made quite a bit of money doing it.
Correct. Now, on the other end, just as an aside,